Hello everyone, my name is Ian Vair and I am the Green Mountain Chef, coming to you from the studios of PEG TV here in Rutland, Vermont. Today I have a lovely dish for you. It is a sauteed chicken and pesto with wild chicken mushrooms. My ingredients I pull from the local farmers markets. 2 farmers markets here in Rutland and 1 in Dorset, Saturdays and Sundays. There are many wonderful ingredients that I'm able to utilize for my recipes. And essentially I've decided to source my food locally for all of the shows that I'll be filming here at PEG TV. So, all that said, I have a wonderful surprise for everyone today. I have brought free-range chicken, I've brought local asparagus, I have local basil and garlic. I even have some wild foraged chicken of the woods mushrooms. I don't know if we can see that here. These are actually freeze-dried mushrooms. They're quite interesting. Wild mushrooms are very particular in the forest. They need specific trees, they need specific conditions, they need specific humidity, and for me, as I find them, I'm able to preserve them with a freeze dryer, which is what I've done today. There will be episodes in the future that I have fresh mushrooms, and for today, it's quite interesting using these because when you do freeze dry the mushrooms, they are preserved for, believe it or not, decades. And 95% of the nutrients are retained when you do this. It's quite a wonderful method as a chef because the mushroom season is only half of the year, and usually most mushrooms only come out for a few weeks or sometimes a few months, and it's not always easy to source them. So a few weeks ago I bumped into these in the woods, and not too difficult to identify. They're a type of polypore, no gill structure. They're actually pure yellow underneath and many pores. They grow on dead wood. As far as mushrooms go, wild mushrooms, I always recommend to follow a mentor into the woods. There are wonderful guides like National Audubon Society guides that can help you to identify mushrooms, but unless you have a mentor or an expert with you, it's never a good idea to use wild mushrooms or to eat wild mushrooms. So, I have some here today because one of my specialties beyond being a chef is sourcing wild mushrooms. And the freeze-dried mushrooms, they're interesting because simply by rehydrating the mushrooms in warm water, I'm able to utilize them just as I would a standard fresh mushroom. So I have about half a cup of warm water here, and I have several petals from the chicken of the woods, which I'm going to soak in the water for a few minutes, basically until the mushrooms are fully hydrated. These will take a few minutes, and in the meantime I want to talk about some of the other ingredients that I have here that I was able to source at the farmers markets this weekend. Vendors they're friends. They're, you know, as I speak to them about coming on camera and cooking with our local ingredients and supporting the market, frequently I'm given ingredients. I'm given vegetables. And one that was very generously given to me was a local asparagus. And they're nice asparagus. You know, sometimes in the store you'll see bunches of asparagus, and it's hard to know where they're from. It's hard to know, you know, how big they should be or how small they should be. And in culinary school, they actually taught us that the smaller, almost pencil-thin asparagus is the one that we really want to go for. And, you know, we see these big, long stalks. How do we know how much of them to eat? Well, honestly, a simple snap at the bottom, and the bottom part of it is quite fibrous. So that I'm going to be discarding. Going through all these, and you can see this one snaps on its own. And what I've done with these using safe knife skills, keeping your fingers straight and your thumb tucked. Simply cut it on a bias. Now these I'm going to be sauteing, so I elected to steam them first. And I have a small quantity here, about a cup, that I steamed before the show, so that I'm able to cook them right away in the saute pan. So these guys I'm going to put off to the side. And after I prep them, I steam them for honestly only about 2 minutes. Okay, I don't want them to be mush. I want them to be slightly firm to the tooth, a bit al dente. So I'm going to put those to the side there. Let's see. Okay, asparagus. Mushrooms, let me check on these guys. They are, I'm just going to flip them over a little bit so that they become fully hydrated. They're almost like a fresh mushroom. It's amazing. Once they're rehydrated. Now I'll come back to those. So today I'm going to be making a pesto sauce. And pesto, you know, it's a traditional Italian sauce dish, if you will. And some people use it to dip vegetables and bread and things like that. Today I'm going to be incorporating it into a fresh pasta. Quite nice. I also was able to source fresh basil at the farmer's market, most of which I've already prepped and is in my food processor. But as we look at the basil, I just want to point out that we're not going to be using the stem, okay? So I'm going to pinch off the leaves. We can all see this. Okay, I'll be discarding the stem. There's a wonderful array of fresh herbs at the farmer's market. Highly recommend coming down Saturdays 9 to 2 here in Rutland. So, I have 2 cups of basil in my food processor, and along with that I'm going to be mixing up some pine nuts. Now some recipes will call for raw pine nuts, others will call for toasted pine nuts. That's what I prefer personally. So I took the raw pine nuts, and these unfortunately I was not able to get at the farmer's market, but the local grocer did have them. The toasted pine nuts, they went into my oven at 350 for about 5 or 6 minutes, and just a light golden brown. I personally prefer the flavor a bit. So I have the basil and the pine nuts. Just a light pulse. Scrape down the sides a bit. Another light pulse. Let's see here. Parmesan cheese. I have some fresh grated Parmesan cheese. Lovely cheeses at the farmer's market as well. We're able to get all kinds of delicious cheeses. So if you go down, and there's several vendors who sell them. This is a fresh parm that I was able to locate, and this is going to go right into the food processor. Again, a fast pulse. Not a hard sauce, folks. So far we have 2 cups of basil. I used about 1/3 of a cup of pine nuts. Half a cup of fresh Parmesan grated. Now, while this is actually on, I'm going to slowly add in the olive oil. And this will allow it to emulsify. You don't want to pour it all right in. What will happen when you do that is it will separate. And it won't make for a nice sauce. Almost Okay, one more stir inside of the food processor. All right, a little bit of salt and pepper to taste. Not too much. I like to use kosher salt. I can feel it as it goes into the sauce. Maybe 1/8 of a teaspoon if you're measuring. Just a dab of black pepper. One more pull. Okay, and that is all set to go. Okay. Now our mushrooms look beautiful. And all I'm going to be doing with these is just lightly pressing out the water. Okay, now this is almost like a broth, what's left over, this yellow liquid, and this can be used in your sauce when you're using mushrooms and you're sautéing, or maybe if you're putting them into a soup or something. This is good to incorporate with your dish. So next, I have a whole free-range chicken that I was able to also locate at the local farmer's market, and it's a beautiful chicken. This is locally raised by a good friend, believe it or not. It's wonderful going to the markets and sourcing products when you know exactly where they're from. They're not from some giant chicken farm somewhere off where we don't even know. This is almost from our backyard. So I'm going to take this guy. And I thought about just bringing chicken breast, but I thought it might be nice to actually demo using a whole chicken. And we won't be using the whole entire chicken today, but I'm going to use the chicken breast. But there's many other parts of it that can be saved for other meals. Okay? So, what I'm going to be doing, let's see, I'm going to be cutting right down the backbone. Okay? And let's see here. With the top side down. She'll open right up. Okay. From there's the inside here in the sternum, and literally you're just barely cutting along the side. Just kind of loosen it up, and your fingers will run along, and it opens right up. And then with one hand on the bottom and one on the top, this pops right out. Not terribly difficult. Okay, now I'm going to cut this in half. I'll part it out so that we have the leg quarter. Of course, we have the wings. And essentially what I'm doing here, folks, is cutting through the joints. Okay? There's sort of like soft spots in the chicken that you can cut into. One more time. There's the leg quarter. And the wings. I like to cut off the wing tips. Now this whole time, everyone, please make sure that your fingers are tucked in. Your thumb is back at all times. Alright, I'm going to reserve these for another meal. Now the breast. So I want a skinless breast, so I'm just going to peel back the skin and just nudge my knife along to open it up. And that will pull right off. All right. I'll show you that again. Okay. All right. I also have some chicken tenders right inside here that I'm going to utilize for another dish. So I'm going to put these over with the other parts here. And I actually, for this dish, I only want about 8 ounces. So both of these together is probably close to a pound. I have a scale here. I'm going to go ahead and weigh one of these guys. And yes, it looks like it's just about right. I'm going to get my hands washed. It's important to wash your hands when working with chicken, folks. They do carry salmonella. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is cut this basically into about 4 or 5 pieces and then come back across it. There we go. Wonderful. All right. So we have our chicken broken down, we have our pesto sauce made, we have our mushrooms, we have our asparagus, which due to time I didn't actually steam on the show here, but just before, and like I'd said, that's only about a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes in boiling water. What I'm going to do now is get my saute pan on. Now, with French cooking methods, sauteing is a very, very healthy method. And believe it or not, it is a dry method. Even though we're using oil, the definition of the dry method is not using any water. So I'm going to get a nice hot pan. I have some healthy avocado oil, which I'll be using, loaded with monounsaturated fats. And while that's still heating up, I have some garlic here that I neglected to put in my pesto. This is also locally sourced, and I'm going to use 2 to 3 cloves. These are quite large cloves, so I decided to go with just a few of them. And I'm just slightly breaking them down. A quick pulse. Some of you might have said, he didn't put his garlic in. You were right. Ready. Okay, our pan looks nice. I'm going to put the chicken in first because it's going to take the longest to cook. Now, when we post this recipe up at the end of the show, this will be for approximately 2 servings. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the pasta while that's cooking. This is a fresh egg pasta, and there is a pasta maker at one of the Vermont farmers markets here that donated some pasta to me. This is a beautiful fettuccine pasta made only with eggs, flour, and a bit of water. It's quite lovely. Does not take nearly as long to cook as your average macaroni pasta, about 3 to 4 minutes tops. Boiling salted water. Looks like we're almost ready. All right. So these mushrooms, these chicken mushrooms, these petals, I'm just going to slice. They're beautiful. They're bright orange. I have approximately a cup of these prepped up. Now, with wild mushrooms, you always want to cook them. A lot of people might be a little afraid of wild mushrooms because they think about toxicity, and the truth is all mushrooms have some level of toxicity, but by cooking them, you're ensuring that it's very, very, very palatable. I've been eating these for about a dozen years now. They're one of my favorites. Okay, the chicken's close to being done. I'm going to add in the wild chicken mushrooms. And I have a few more. I think I'm going to add in a couple more just for fun. Okay, those need to go for just a moment here. And let's take a look at this pasta. Our water is nice and boiling, salted. And like I said, not as long as a macaroni pasta, in 8 to 10 minutes. It's going to be about 3 minutes. Rolling boil. I have a timer here. Okay. So, this show is incorporating local ingredients. We're cooking healthy. As a mushroom enthusiast and chef, I will usually be bringing in some sort of wild mushroom that I'll be talking about. And the mushrooms that I'll be bringing in are relatively easy to identify. I do have a booth at the farmer's market, and sometimes people like to come down and talk to me about wild mushrooms, and I invite anyone to do that. See, we're starting to get some caramelization on the mushrooms. Chicken's looking like it's fully cooked. I'm going to add in the asparagus. Now the pesto has a small amount of salt and pepper, but I believe the dish is going to need a little bit more, so I'm going to add a little more kosher salt to it, and another pinch of black pepper. So along with sourcing all these ingredients locally, I also broke down all the nutrient levels, basically, the calories, the fats, the proteins, the carbohydrates. People are interested in those kind of things. So calorie-wise, per serving, this came down to about 800 calories. And the majority of that is from the olive oil. And some people might say that sounds like a lot, but the truth is the olive oil it's extra virgin, and it's an excellent source of calories and of energy. Okay, our pasta we're just about at 3 minutes. We all can see that. Now I'm going to add in about a cup of my pesto sauce. Excuse me. I don't want this to break. Everything's cooked, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. Taking my pasta, draining that off. So sauteed chicken breast with chicken of the woods mushrooms and fresh pesto. Tossed with fresh fettuccine pasta. So let's see, nutrient-wise, we broke down to about 70 grams of fat, 85 grams each of protein and carbohydrates. Nice healthy ingredients, folks. You might even get 3 portions out of this, or 4, depending on how much you and your family eat. All right. So can we see this, everyone? All right. So this is the sauteed chicken and pesto pasta with wild chicken of the woods mushroom. My name's Chef Ian Vair. I'm the Green Mountain Chef. Tune in. My shows will get better. Keep coming back. Peg TV, Rutland, Vermont. Thanks for watching, everybody.